And before I introduce our special guest, I want to ground you in something you may not hear often in trading spaces, but your habits don't just shape your routine, they shape your identity. And identity is the root of your trading consistency. Let's start with a bold but very real statement. Your daily habits are your risk management. Think about that for a moment. Traders often obsess about another strategy, about backtesting, technical perfection, and as much as that is extremely important, traders often forget about the most important variable in the entire equation, themselves. You are the one who is pressing the button. You are the one deciding whether to hold the trade, exit the trade, or enter the trade. And honestly, if your lifestyle is chaotic, if your lifestyle is reactive, undisciplined, that's exactly how you are going to trade. It's not about being perfect, but if you don't take care of your nervous system, you will not give your brain enough clarity and rest and rhythm in order for you to make non-emotional decisions in a market. So today we're shifting the spotlight away from the charts and placing it on the human behind the trades, because setups don't fail. It's often the trader who fails the setup due to being unregulated. And today I'm joined by someone who lives and breathes this principle, someone who has built his trading career not just on setups, but on systems, not just on strategy, but structure in his daily life. Kyle, known as JadeCap, is with us to talk about habits, lifestyle, and what it actually takes to trade well consistently.
So I think the biggest thing is that my habits really haven't changed. I've just tried to dial in a lot more recently. Um,
Okay.
and I would say the biggest difference between the stages where I was unprofitable versus profitable, I just tried to show up every single day and complete the same task that I know create profitability. So that's meditation in the morning. That's doing my evening prep. So when I sit down at the charts, typically the night before, I already know what I'm looking for the following day based on the daily closure. Now, if
Okay.
I'm not, if I'm not following that process and that routine, a lot of times you show up to the charts and you don't know what to do, right? So, like, I think a lot of
Mhm.
traders kind of just show up to the charts. They're trying to find a trade setup, but they don't really have a plan. So, I think the biggest issue is that they're just not prepared in general. And I didn't really start implementing meditation until I really went full time. I think I probably could have went full time earlier when I was uh, when I was still working a job if I had just become more aware of my emotions. Yeah, the biggest thing for me was to try and just focus on the small daily tasks. So
Mm.
meditation, journaling, preparation, making sure I'm eating a proper diet and making sure that I'm journaling at the end of the day. And when it comes to journaling, I'm talking about journaling my emotions. And most of the time, everybody's so focused on trade data that they don't journal their emotions. They don't know how they feel when they're in a specific trade setup. And the biggest problem that most traders have is when they put on risk, now they don't know what to do. They don't have a plan once they're in the trade. And the biggest leaps that I had was when I just kind of submitted to the markets because I can't control what the trade's going to do once I put the
Yeah.
trade on.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the whole control lies in what you're going to do and how you're going to respond to the trade, to the exit, to the entry, to the behavior of the market itself. But you're talking here about meditation and about routine. So we're going to dab more into that subject. But I'm very interested in meditation because you know what? There is a lot of coaches and there, etc., that actually do preach, daily routines, morning routines, evening routines. Now, at some point I can see in a space that turned into a joke, and I can see why, because there is sometimes an exaggeration when it comes to daily or morning or evening routines, but actually there is a huge power in it. And I want to understand, what did come first for you, the emotional awareness that you need to start applying meditations, or did meditation come first that had given you the emotional awareness?
I had an edge and I knew I had some really good trades that panned out. And going back through like a lot of my journals and just being more aware, I kind of noticed that some of the best trades that I had were effortless. Like I didn't have to put a whole lot of mental capital into those specific trades. And really I just needed to realize like the market's going to do all the heavy lifting for me. I don't need to try and control and micromanage the trades, which I think is a big issue. I think a lot of traders are so focused on the control aspect, right? A lot of traders are control freaks. They want to be able to control the market, which we can't do. And uh, what I noticed was that when I first started meditation, I could not sit still with my own thoughts for more than 10 seconds, right? You're sitting down, they call it the monkey mind, right? You're sitting down,
Yes.
you're trying to sit still and not focus on anything, really trying to have a complete blank um, emotional state, which is extremely difficult to do once you first start getting into it. And then you realize that, you know, those issues and those flaws that you have in your mental state, they carry into trading because once you place the trade, now all of a sudden you're thinking about all these different outcomes that you aren't in control of. Like I can't control whether the market's going to trade against me, whether it's going to go to my stop loss, whether it's going to go to my take profit. So, you know, I think the biggest realization was that if I can learn how to be more aware of my emotions, not control them, because I have a couple people, you know, it's literally this morning somebody asked me, how do I disconnect from my emotions or how do I like delete my emotions? And to
Mm.
be quite frank, you can't do that. You can't just become a robot. You know, unless you're trading an algorithmic strategy where there's no human error involved, you are human and you are going to have specific emotions around trades. And me, with over a decade of experience, I still go through that process. And I've just gotten better of, you know, when I feel those emotions bubbling up, I just do my best to try and remain calm and remember what the plan of the trade is. So, you know, the emotional awareness thing is extremely, extremely important because there's triggers that, you know, produce different decisions that you make in the market, whether you get fearful, whether you get greedy, whether you get anxious or angry at the markets, right? That causes revenge trading. These all, you know, all the emotional triggers that most traders go through, there are simple solutions to them. So if you are a, you know, consistent revenge trader, maybe it's because you are, you just don't like accepting losses and that makes you angry or anxious. And when you can figure out those emotional triggers that cause those bad habits, that's really when you start diving into, you know, how am I supposed to approach the markets properly, like as a professional?
Mm.
And you know, you just become more aware of your emotions. I still get, you know, I still get frustrated. I still get anxious. I still get fearful. I still get greedy. But when those emotions pop up, I don't tend to make the same mistakes that I used to.
This is brilliant, you know, and I think one of the sentences that I picked up here is that you said when you are consistently over trading, you know, it's a different type of consistency when you're actually doing the opposite to what you're supposed to do. And one of the things that you highlighted here is extremely important, you know, what you call the monkey mind. So when you were sitting down to meditate, Kyle said, well, I couldn't sit down for longer than 10 minutes. And then if you
10
are unable
seconds.
to, 10
10
seconds,
seconds.
not even
Yeah.
10 minutes, 10 minutes is actually pretty good, 10 seconds.
Right.
And that is just literally a reflection of self-destruction in the markets, because if you are unable to sit with your own thoughts, if you are unable to control your own thoughts, how are you going to do that in a market when market is volatile, when market can trigger so many emotions? We already know that. But if you are unable to hold that thought and emotional control, you can't replicate it in the market. So that calm mind is what is important, because one of the things that you're so completely right, Kyle, about is that traders want to switch off their emotions, and that's not what it is about. It's about recognition of your emotion, understanding your emotion and not acting on your emotion, or trying to minimize the impact of that emotion at
Right.
least. Right?
And I think when it comes to like a journaling standpoint, a lot of traders just, so if they have a specific trade idea, a lot of them, if they take a loss, they don't try and analyze what happens to the trade after they've taken the loss. They'll try and
Yeah.
find another trade, right? They're going to delete the risk reward tool, and then all of a sudden they don't know the original trade that they have. So something that I recognized probably way too far into my career was a lot of the trades that I took. some of them panned out and actually went to my take profit. So instead of me just placing the trade and leaving the trade alone, I would find myself in numerous different trades, changing my bias, going short on a market that I was planning to go long during that specific day. And the adverse price action. So when I entered the trade, maybe it started going against me, or maybe it went in my favor and then it started going against me. I would exit the trade and then enter an opposing position. When if I had just left the trade alone, right, it maybe have gone to my take profit. And those are the emotions that no mentor or teacher can teach you in the markets. You have to experience it yourself. And I face this almost every single day when I'm trading live with my community. So when I'm in a trade, sometimes it'll run 1R in our direction and then it retraces back to break even. And I ask my community, how do you guys feel about this trade currently? Because it's going against us. It's getting close to our break even point, or maybe it's even going into drawdown a little bit. And a lot of them feel very uncomfortable with it. A lot of them maybe exit manually because they don't want to take a loss. And then if you had just held that position through the rest of the day, it may start trading towards your target. And I just experienced this numerous times just this week, where the trade starts moving out in our favor. We're up 1R, comes back to break even, and I just hold it. And I tell my community, all right, well, I can't control that the market's retracing back to our break even point. And if you exit manually just based on your fear of losing money in your account, you're never going to be able to hold those winners, right? And because people look at the outcome, they think that this trade's an automatic loser if it starts going against them. And an analogy I like to use, it's kind of like taking a bus, right? So you buy a bus ticket to get to your final destination, but you don't know the route that the bus is going to take. It might take multiple stops. It might do a pit stop and stay for a night, and they'll tell you, hey, you have to get off the bus, and we're going to get back on the bus. But at some point, that trade will possibly get to your destination, right? And you don't know how long that route is going to take. And it's the same thing with trading. When you enter the trade, everybody would love to think that it's going to go straight to my take profit. There are some trades that do that, right? But the majority of the time, the markets don't move in a straight line. So you have to be comfortable in that chop and in that mess to be able to see that trade to your take profit level. And during that time frame, so let's say if you're taking a 1 hour trade, you have to be aware of how long that 1 hour setup is going to take to pan out to get to your take profit. So let's say if you plan a 1 to 3, that trade might take 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours. You don't know how long it's going to take before it starts moving in a direction. And really, that's the emotional battle that every trader faces. They cannot sit still and be patient and let the market do what it's going to do before it makes its run to your specified target. And if it doesn't, you have to be able to cut that loser quickly, right? Don't adjust your stop loss and take on more risk, because the point of having a stop loss is that it's your invalidation level. So why are you trying to manually override the invalidation level if it hasn't taken you out? I let the market take me out, right? If not, when I'm taking a profit off of the table, a lot of times it's due to time of day, but that trade needs to be above 1 or 2R for me to actually take it off the table. Because when I look at the data, you need to be able to have the winners pay for the losers. If you can't do that, then you're not going to be a profitable trader. So if you are consistently aiming for 3R trades, if you hit a single winner, now all of a sudden you have 3 losses that you can possibly take before you're back to break even. And that's the whole point of playing the probabilities and having true risk management and being comfortable with the risk that you're putting on.
100%. And you spoke about the illusion that traders hold, because the traders are outcome driven. We are, as people, very outcome driven. But specifically traders, they just want to see trading for the profits, whilst trading is about taking losses, is about profits, is about break even if it's in your risk management plan, and it's about missing opportunities.
And it's also about taking losses. Like if you take a good loss and followed all your rules, it's just part of the game, right? So like when I went on that very large streak with Apex and even Tradeify, my win rate was like a 35%. But that's because I scale into the trades that are doing well. I think a lot of traders do the opposite. They like to scale into trades when the market's going against them, because they have this notion that they can't be wrong. right? So they double down on their losers. They widen their stop losses because their analysis is telling them that this trade has to pan out, and they're just not comfortable with the idea that they could be wrong on a specific trade idea.
Yeah, I completely feel you. I completely feel you and completely agree with you. But I have a question now about some of the routines or beliefs you held early on that you had to unlearn, let's say, before you became consistent. Because I think there are certain belief systems and routines that we engage in before we adapt the whole cycle.
Well, I think the biggest belief that I had was once I became a profitable trader, or if I was able to become a full-time trader, that all of a sudden you just crack the code and you're never wrong ever again.
Yeah.
That's probably the biggest thing that most people are chasing. They're trying to chase this holy grail where they're always going to be right in a market. And that is completely, the opposite of what full-time traders and professional traders think. Right. So we're always managing a risk. We're always managing the downside because we know that that next trade that we put on, if we get overconfident in it, we can suffer a massive loss. So I am just very, very comfortable now doing my analysis, taking the risk, and cutting my losers very quickly. So if a trade starts moving in my favor, I try and take as much risk off the table as I can. So I'm aggressively managing stops as long as that trade is starting to move in my direction. So yeah, again, the biggest belief that I think most traders fall victim to is that they can crack the code and find a system that is always going to work every single day. And that's just not the case.
100%. I think that's the illusion that once you're a consistent trader, you never blow an account, you never, lose an account, you're always on a
Or
winning
you never go
streak.
on tilt, right? I think
Yeah,
a lot of traders out there,
absolutely.
Rips talks about it because he understands tilt probably more so than a lot of traders, just because he's a professional poker player. That once you hit a certain level, and I talk to traders that have way more experience than me, 30 or 40 years in the markets, and they still go on tilt. It's not something that you can
100%.
really avoid. It's just something that you get better at dealing with. I know I'm going to go on tilt, or I feel like I'm about to go on tilt, so let me just close down my screens and get away from the markets. So even yesterday, I took a break-even trade, but I'm taking today off because I already had 4 profitable days prior to that, and my mental capital feels drained. And that's more of an awareness thing. It's not me showing up every single day and trying to force my will upon the market. It's just I know that I'm fatigued and I'm going to take a break from the markets. There's nothing wrong with stepping away from the markets, resetting, and taking a proper break, especially when you're on tilt. Because when you're on tilt, that can carry over for days, if not weeks.
It has a domino effect for sure, because then it has a huge impact on your confidence, on how you perceive the markets, how you perceive risk. It really can stack up into months
Yeah.
sometimes,
And a lot of
especially,
traders, they don't know how to wipe the slate clean and just start fresh,
yes.
right? I have some people that have reached out to me and they're thinking so much about the career losses that they've had. Maybe they're down, a couple of people have reached out to me and said they're down, hundreds of thousands of dollars. But the reality is that if you cannot let go of that and go forward and reset from that, you're never going to be able to trade profitably, because now all of a sudden you're trading from a place of desperation and you're trying to make back all those losses that you've had previously in your career. Whereas, for me, I never really set goals for a specific week. I just try and take what the market gives me. So I never say I'm going to make X amount of money on this specific day. I'm never going to say, I need to make this amount during the specific month, because what happens is if you have a plan in place, let's say I want to take X amount of trades this specific week, what's going to happen when Thursday rolls around and you haven't met that weekly goal? Now, all of a sudden, Friday, you're going to be over trading, you're going to be over leveraging to try and meet those goals. When you have to trade around the specific market conditions. You have to take what the market is going to give you. And if the market is giving you consolidating price action and you're still placing the trades that you're supposed to, but you're not meeting those goals, then you're just not really aligned with how the markets really operate.
100%. I mean, I have nothing else to add. This is brilliant. But the thing that I want to highlight to our viewers is the mental capacity, because very often traders look at only their P&L and only because they are in profit, only because they still have daily loss limit, they think, okay, I still have the capacity to trade. No, it's actually about your mental capacity, emotional capacity, because your emotional capacity dictates how you are going to manage those trades, because everybody can have a trading plan, but are you going to follow it? That is the number one question. And if you mentally feeling drained, you will not be able to do it. For myself, if I have a bad night's sleep, I'm unable to make good, quick decisions.
Yeah,
I could
same.
watch my trade be in profit, turn around on me, go to break even, back to stop loss, and I feel almost paralyzed. I don't know what decision to make, So I now know that when I feel a certain way, I cannot trade in the market.
Yeah, and so one thing that really affected my trading was, and most traders maybe go through this, they think that they can trade every single session, where if they're not trading a specific session, they're losing out on possible profits. Where now I don't trade London at all. I do not wake up early. I try and get my full 8 hours of sleep. And if I don't, or even if I do get my full 8 hours of sleep, but I feel like I haven't gotten a full rest, then I just try not to trade, because again, it comes down to the decision making. If you're fatigued and you're not sharp, you're going to make poor decisions.
Yep.
So a lot of times I have to be locked in, and I can't be locked in 5 days a week, I don't think. For me personally, even though I'm trading very lightly, I'm taking like 1 to 2 trades a day, if that. Just the time in the markets is draining. So even if I'm not doing anything, I still have to manage that trade, and all these different emotions are popping up whilst I'm in the trade, right? So
Absolutely.
even though you don't recognize it, that is a very draining session. If you're, if you're very worried about the position that you have on, by the time that session ends, it feels like you've lost 5 years off of your life, because the emotions that go into managing that position and making sure that you're not making mistakes, even on a profitable day, you have to be able to recognize that, and you have to be able to understand that, hey, maybe I wasted too much mental capital on this one specific trade. Even though it panned out in my favor, I need to be able to reset. And if I don't get that reset period from today until tomorrow, then I know that that following day, I just am not, I don't have the edge.
I get it. I get it. And you know what? I would want to ask you something, because we're talking about trade management. We're talking about sometimes even getting drained whilst you are watching the charts or waiting. But what are your non-negotiable routines that you perform or go to after every single trade? Win, loss, you engage in something, or maybe it's not after every single trade. Maybe it's after every single session. What is your go-to routines that you will perform no matter what?
Well, really, it's mainly journaling and having a proper reset period. So I try not to journal right after the trade is done, because there's too many emotions that are, popping up. So at least give myself a couple hours before I journal. So I'll journal kind of before I do my analysis and prep for the next day. And I try not to spend too much time overthinking the journal or overthinking the previous trade that I had. The biggest thing is that, did I follow my rules? Right? Did I follow the plan that I put in place the prior day? And, did I not make any mistakes? If I made some mistakes, then I know that it's not a great day. And that can come with a green P&L. So a lot of traders, again, are so outcome based that they mistake a very good day with that green P&L, even though they broke all the rules. And I am not, I'm not perfect. I went through periods on that Apex run where I had a really great day, $50,000 or more in a specific day, and I'm still unhappy with the performance because I knew I overtraded, I knew I over leveraged to get that green P&L. And what I try to do is just come back to the next day and make sure I'm not going to make those same mistakes again. That goes into like a tilt cycle where people make mistakes and they have a very green day, which they associate with proper trading, right? And then they go into the next day and they go in that cycle of having those bad habits again because it worked out the prior day. And that's just recency bias, right? They're looking at it like, I'm rewarded by breaking my rules.
Yes.
And when you're looking at your journal, try not to look at the P&L. The P&L is not the scoreboard. The scoreboard is, did I follow my rules to a T that is going to produce positive results for the long term? That's real consistency. And it doesn't come from the P&L, because if you're consistently breaking rules, at some point you're going to have a massive red day that is going to wipe out all the prior days of, following those rules and getting a proper P&L.
The market definitely is going to punish you for breaking your rules. Like, you might be on a streak for a week and feel invincible. The market is going to get you back. Like, be sure of it. And then it then takes a lot longer to recover psychologically as well. Now, we talked about, again, I want to refer back to daily routine, because again, habits build a momentum, habits drive a change. And you said that you couldn't even meditate for 10 seconds. And I guess a lot of people want to get into meditation because everybody talks about it, whether that's life coaching, whether that's trading spaces. What did you do to get yourself used to that habit? And when did you start seeing benefits of meditation in your trading?
Well, honestly, it became a non-negotiable. So I use an app called Headspace, and they keep track of your streaks, and it's very simple. So they have different segments that are categorized. I mean, a lot of them are very similar, but a lot of them go into like balance and patience. Those are the different categories, and then there might be like a 10-episode segment where you can choose how long of a duration you are going to meditate for. So when you're first starting out with meditation, maybe you only want to do 5 minutes or 10 minutes a day, and then start slowly building up. It doesn't take a whole lot of time, right? And I think it has such a major impact on your performance that you should do it prior to the session starting, right? Even if you're meditating and visualizing how you're going to perform during that specific trading session, like, I'm going to take X amount of entries. I'm not going to move my stop loss emotionally, not going to over leverage. Those are all very small things that, in the moment, people get tunnel vision. And it's very much like sports athletes. When the inexperienced athlete gets very tunnel vision because they don't have the awareness of the rest of the game going on around them. Maybe they don't have the experience, whatever the case is. You have to become aware of everything that's going on around you. Maybe you have outside distractions, right? Maybe you got in an argument with a family member or something like that, and they don't realize that that is having an impact on your trading. And I actually went to FX Summit a couple years ago, and this one young woman came up to me, and she said that she had an issue with her funded accounts. She had made like $20,000 or $30,000 in a week, and then she got in a huge fight with her mom. I guess her and her mom had kind of a toxic relationship, and then she went back into the markets the following day, and then right before the payout, the day before the payout, she blew her accounts, and not realizing like the outside factors are having a role in your trading. So you need to make sure that you're in a proper headspace before you enter the markets, because you're going to try and take out any outside frustrations on the markets. And for me, that was the case for a very long time, because I was unhappy in my current situation. I didn't enjoy going to my job, even though the career ladder, I was climbing up the ladder pretty quickly. It's just not what I wanted to do. So a lot of people take their insecurities and everything into the markets, and that's where they're trying to make it back, right? They're trying to prove to other people that I can do something better with my life. And when you try and set, the tone when you're trading, that is not very conducive to a long-term career. You have to be able to show up and understand that the markets don't care about the situation that you're in, right? They don't have an opinion, and they do what they want. So like, just because you have bills to pay and just because you want to change your life, the market does not care about that. And you have to remind yourself of that every single day when you show up to the charts.
Absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. I think sometimes the markets just fuel that negative emotion because traders allow themselves to fuel that, just exactly how you said. It's such a strong correlation between the market's performance and, what happens in our lives. And when did you start believing in your trading system? Because I guess I always say this, I believe a lot of traders have a working trading system. I think actually a lot of different systems works.
I think that too. I think 90% of people out there probably have a working system.
Honestly, I know some people who are making a killing with the simplest strategies, because what they do, they allow for the numbers to play out. They have strong psychology. So it's not about how sophisticated your system is, because you could have the most sophisticated system with high winning rate, but if you will not allow it to play out, it won't play out. What happened in your trading where you started to believe, okay, I will allow for my trade to play out? I will allow it to go to my take profit despite of potentially hitting break even or sitting in drawdown, or price consolidating, and me staying patient for as long as I need to until the price reaches profit.
Well, I think you really have to look at how do those trades pan out where you're profitable. A lot of them are effortless. Like, you're following your system and you're letting the market do its job. And long term, when you're looking at your data, you have to understand that trading is very streaky. You're going to go through cold streaks and you're going to go through hot streaks. And the biggest thing is that when you go through a cold streak, you have to manage the downside. So if you can properly manage the downside and maybe move your stops to break even when it's logical to, and not just jam the stop up, or down when the markets are going in your favor. It has to be logically thought out where I'm going to move my stop loss to a point that makes sense to take risk off the table, instead of, when the trade starts moving in my favor, let me just move the stop up because I don't want to take a loss. And going through your data, you're going to realize that it is a numbers game. You're going to have cold streaks. You're going to have hot streaks. It's just about when you're on a hot streak, you have to ride that as much as possible. So when I'm doing very well, I tend to scale in a fair amount, because I can turn that 2 or 3 hour trade into a 5 or 6 hour trade just by adding another position without adding additional risk. So if I can get my initial position to break even, now all of a sudden I have another position that I can put on at 1 hour risk. And if I get stopped out of all of them, I'm only losing 1 hour. And you have to take advantage of when the markets are moving in your favor. And when the markets are moving in your favor, trading is easy. It's just when the markets are not moving in your favor, that's when it's difficult. That's when people break their rules, and that's when people start to over leverage and oversize, and they're kind of trading like they're addicts. Like, they need action all the time. And I think the biggest realization was that my trade frequency was one of the biggest issues that I had. And this is a huge reason why I keep poker chips on my desk. I talk about it all the time. I have poker chips on my desk, and this goes with funded accounts as well. So everybody's always asking, what's your risk management? What's your, how much are you risking on a specific trade? This is all very personal. You have to answer that yourself. When it comes to funded accounts, I know traders out there that will try and get funded as fast as possible, but that's because if they lose the account, they'll just buy another one. There's nothing wrong with that if your finances can withstand that, right? But if they can't, and you're trying to keep an account, you have to give yourself as many opportunities as possible. Think about if you're at a casino, the people that have the most chips on, in front of them, they can make logical decisions, because that one decision that they make that might be wrong is not going to kill them. Whereas if you only have 5 chips left, now all of a sudden you're desperate, right? You're desperate for a win, and you make poor decisions. And it's more about playing the edge and, finding those high probability opportunities and taking advantage of them in a smart way, right? We're not going all in on a specific trade, but yeah, it's about finding those high probability setups where, if you're able to kind of double down and ride those winners, right, you're going to come out way ahead.
100%. I think what you said about winning streaks and losing streaks, your true psychology showcases during your losing streaks, because when we win, we all have brilliant psychology, but when we actually start losing, that's where your gaps in psychology will start showcasing. And this is where you should really pay attention to yourself, because it's literally you yourself speaking to yourself about what needs to be fixed, because seeking that constant action and trying to fix the problem that is not a problem, because losses are just part of our job, it becomes really tricky as well, So I really love that. And I really love how you found your own way of dealing with things, of risk management, of kind of putting things in front of you. Those chips are important because they help you to materialize trading. This represents something to you, because sometimes trading becomes an illusion. It's just numbers floating around and people get so detached from it, even when they deposit their own money or buy challenges, etc. And that is a very good way of managing things. I manage my trades differently. I know, or maybe not differently, I want to secure something out of the market that I know is going to support my edge to consistently grow. As long as I get that, I'm happy. If I can squeeze out more out of the markets, brilliant. If I can't, brilliant. That's all I care about, and I always just remain satisfied and just build. So that's extremely important too. Now, I want to go back into the habits of yours, because you said journaling is extremely important, meditation is extremely important, but then you also mentioned diet. You also mentioned other factors, and you also mentioned athletes, and I always speak about it too. Us as traders, we should be treating ourselves as athletes, because we really need to cultivate that power up here. When we look at athletes, the biggest names, Ronaldo, etc., it's all about their mindset. Because is he more talented? Maybe, but I think it's all down to hard work. And I guess that would be the whole debate between Messi and Ronaldo. Messi perhaps is a talent, natural talent, whereas Ronaldo has really worked hard to get to where he is. But let's not go into that debate, everybody in comment section, okay? But this is all it is about. It's about, non-negotiable things, an all-rounded approach. Talk to me more about the diet, about sleep, about all of those things that actually matter that nobody talks about within the industry.
Yeah, so I think lately, at least in the past, I don't know, 6 months, I've actually cut out a lot of carbs. So I'm mainly on a keto diet, and I've just realized that I'm less groggy and tired. Well, a lot of processed carbs, so pasta, bread. I don't know. I barely eat carbs, and I've just noticed that my energy levels are higher. I can think more clearly, and I try to avoid sugar. And it's more of like a maintenance thing. I think a lot of traders think that they need to work extremely, extremely hard. But once you get to a certain point, there's only so much you can do to add edge to your trading. Once you have a specific edge, I try not to look into new systems and ways of trading, because I know that the edge that I have is going to pan out, right? I think markets at the end of the day, if you break it down, markets are extremely simple. They're either going up, down, or sideways.
Yes,
And it's more so about how do you approach the markets every single day. So I know, people follow me on social media, but the thing is that real proper trading is extremely boring. I don't know if a lot of traders want to admit that, but it is extremely boring. It's showing up, doing the same things over and over and over every single day. So when it comes to the diet, just eat whole foods. Okay, don't try and eat a lot of processed foods. You're gonna feel bloated. You're gonna feel tired. You're gonna feel groggy, and then not only that, but your body's gonna crave those things as well. So obviously, try and train pretty hard. I train harder when I have a bad day because I know that resets me faster, and that's probably a huge benefit of training hard. I'm pretty big into CrossFit, so if people watched one of the vlogs that I did, I took some traders to the CrossFit gym. These guys were absolutely dying. And the thing with CrossFit is that there's no rest periods during those workouts a lot of times. So you hit that wall of uncomfortability. So you get extremely uncomfortable and you have to push through that. And it's the same thing with trading. When you get extremely comfortable, it's how do you act and approach the markets when you're uncomfortable. And that goes into tilt. And I will say that throughout the past 3-4 years that I've been full time, every single year I go through a period where it feels like I don't have an edge anymore. And I know a lot of traders out there can resonate with that. It feels like you're never going to win a trade ever again. And that's a very dangerous spot to be in, because now all of a sudden you start tweaking different things and you start managing your trades differently, right? You start over trading. And those are all things that are extremely detrimental to your progress as a trader. You have to keep showing up every single day, regardless of the outcome, and get back to what actually works. And what actually works for me is having something that is very simple that I can follow every single day. I'm going to take 1 to 2 positions. I'm going to try and manage that risk appropriately where I'm not, if I get stopped out, I'm not losing 1.5, 2R, 3R in a specific day, right? If I get to that point, I know I need to get off the desk because if you sit there and continue to trade, especially when the market is very choppy and there's no follow through on your trades, it can hurt you a lot. So when it comes to the daily routines, it's a very basic, boring routine, right? Meditation in the morning. I'm having my trading session. Once the trading session is over, typically I'll try and manage my trades leading up into lunch. So if it hasn't made that run by lunchtime, I'll either take the risk off the table or try and cut some risk off. So either I'm going to, take a partial profit or I'm going to reduce the stop. Right? I never widen the stop. I never add into a trade too late in the day. And I just kind of leave it alone if I'm going to let it run. And once that's done, though, right, I might be done by 12 or noon Eastern. Noon or 1 Eastern. Then I just go about my day. So I'm either doing other things around business. Maybe I'll go for a walk. I'll work out, have a proper dinner, maybe read, and then just reset. And it's basically, a full-time routine, right? Because the biggest thing is when you're getting into trading, you're trading for freedom. You're not trading to be at have another desk job. That is the one mistake that I think a lot of people assume about trading is like, now that I have the time to full-time trade, I have to sit in front of the charts for 10 hours a day. That is not what you're trying to do. You're trying to trade the least amount as possible and make the most amount of money in that short time frame so you could go about the rest of your day and the rest of your life and enjoy the fruits of your hard work, right? So you're putting all this labor and effort up front, but once you get to a certain point, it's just about maintenance, right?
100%. And you know what? Another misconception about trading is that traders only feel like full-time traders when they are executing. But you can be a trader and just getting on with your life, like you said.
Exactly. And that's mainly why I swing trade a lot.
Yeah.
I'm placing,
Yeah.
if I wasn't streaming with my community, I'd be placing the trade maybe at the beach or at the gym, like I would be off of the charts because I know that if I sit in front of the screens, I'm susceptible to making mistakes, right? When the market and my P&L is chopping up and down, that's when I'm susceptible to making mistakes. And the more I can disconnect from it and just allow the market what it's going to do, I have a way better chance of profiting.
100%. And one thing I had noticed about trading as well, it's not even about trading sessions. Of course, there are some back-tested sessions that I know that, the volume kicks in and I can perform, but it's actually where the price gets to my level. And whatever.
And that can happen during Asia. That can happen overnight. That can happen during New York session. Again, you can't control when that market is going to move, right? So all you can control is how I'm going to operate around the market, right? And past that point, it's more of a hands-off thing, and it's more about being patient. Right? I think a lot of traders they're lacking that. They think they need to sit in front of the charts and watch every single candle print. But if I'm trading an hourly or 4-hour time frame, I don't need to look at the chart for another hour or 4 hours.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest issue that traders just don't recognize. And which is why maybe a lot of people tend to go towards the intraday side of things where they think they need to watch every single 1-minute candle print. Yes, you can possibly do that, but you have to ask yourself, is this actually adding anything to my trading? Like the trades that do pan out, whether I'm in them or not, does it require any extra effort on my end for it to move to that target, right? So you staring at the market is not going to make the market move faster towards your target.
100%. Another illusion of control, that we think we have as traders. Now, what would you say to someone, because I can see a lot of comments rolling in and I'm trying to pick up on the theme of what people are asking about, but what would you say to someone who may just hold a belief and say, do you know what, I'm just not a disciplined person or can't do trading right? Where should I start? Where do I even begin to start building different habits? Because a lot of people actually don't know where to begin. What would be the first step in your book?
Well, I would say like the negative self-talk probably isn't going to do you any good. So I would probably
Mm,
start there and say that you can do these things, but it's just about doing it in small incremental ways. So if you're not good with your diet, try and just have one proper meal, right? And you kind of have to build those habits over time. Yes, there are periods where you can fall off and slack, and that's part of like tilting, right? You can tilt with your diet and have 1 or 2 bad days, but it's just about getting back on the horse and
mm,
getting back in sync, right? Long term, you have to make sure that, right, I have specific goals and I want to be aligned with those goals. That doesn't mean that if I fall off the horse one time, that now all of a sudden I'm terrible at what I do, right? Uh, you can have binge days where you're eating terrible. You can have rest days where you're not going to work out. People aren't perfect and traders aren't perfect. And I think that's the biggest message is you need to just focus on small, simple habits that are repeatable. But if you miss a day, that doesn't make you a terrible person, right? I have days where I just don't want to get any work done. I fall off the horse, and maybe I just need a break. Maybe
yep.
that's my body telling me that I'm fatigued. I don't want to trade the markets. And previously this year, after the Apex run, I felt extremely fatigued. Even though I was on a hot streak, I just needed time away from the markets. And
Mm,
nobody can really tell you how long you need away from the markets. You're going to know based on your experience. For me, that took like 1 to 2 months where I just didn't feel like looking at the markets anymore. I felt burnt out.
wow.
And it's the same thing with training, right? When you're exercising, maybe you're going to go through a cycle where you're extremely disciplined and you're going to the gym every single day for months on end. And then all of a sudden you don't feel that same motivation to get to the gym. Well, maybe your body just needs a break, right? Maybe you just need a
Exactly.
proper reset. Maybe you need a vacation and you need to just kind of disconnect in the best way possible. And it's hard for
Wow.
traders to disconnect because to me, there's not a lot of things out there where you can do and you're not thinking about the markets. For me, I've gotten back into paintball. So I played competitive paintball for a long time. That's like the only thing that I can do where once I'm on the field, I don't think about the markets whatsoever. Because when I'm in the gym, sometimes I'm thinking about the markets. There's too much downtime where I'm thinking about, all the mistakes that I made that prior day or all the things that I did good or the next trade that I'm trying to plan out. Even golf, there's way too much downtime, right? So you're
Mm,
going from hole to hole, you're getting in the cart, and now all of a sudden I'm looking at the markets, I'm looking at the charts. So that downtime is not true downtime. You need to find a
yep.
hobby or something that is not related to trading that you can really dive into and not think about trading at all, right? So you need to be able to disconnect at times.
100%. I personally do boxing because there is no time to think.
Yeah.
I'm in another survival mode in my mind, me versus me kind of thing, and there is no time for that. And that helps me a lot. It clears my mind too. But then at the same time, sometimes what I like about what you do is even though you engage in other activities, you still think about trading, but you still are processing information, but away from the charts. And that's the key thing, because there is then no space for you to start making mistakes or acting on certain emotions. You are processing, thinking, planning, etc., but it's away from the charts. So that's healthy too. And for those of you who are asking, okay, how do I change? So one key thing that JadeCap highlighted here as well, don't punish yourself, if you are not going to stick to something or you need a break, etc. But also, if you want to change your habits, don't overwhelm yourself. The reason why in January everybody signs up to the gym because they feel motivated, but they don't have that discipline. Often they overwhelm themselves by going 6-7 days a week. They get tired, sore, they stop going. I would say to you, stick from tomorrow or Monday. I would say tomorrow, one thing that you are going to do. Pick up a book for 10 minutes. But make sure that when you're going to make that promise to yourself, I'm going to pick up the book, pick up the book. And that's how you start building the habit. Because at the start, you may not enjoy it. At the start, you may get distracted whilst you
Mhm.
are reading the pages for 10 minutes. Does not matter. What matter is for you to consistently pick up that book. And honestly, once the habit will be built, you will start craving picking up that book. And then you will think, there's something missing in my day. I did not read a book today. Eventually, you will start enjoying it, and the time is going to extend too, So that's extremely important for you. But stick to one thing in trading too, just one thing. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And for me, it was I need to focus on the thing that's holding me back the most.
yeah.
So I'm not sure if you've read it. I think it's The Mental Game of Trading by Jared Tendler. He talks a lot about A game, B game, and C game. The C game
Mm,
habits are really what holds you back in your trading. So if you're over trading, you have to fix that first. If you don't fix the over trading, nothing, all those other positive habits don't mean anything because that
yeah.
one specific bad habit is going to drag down and hold you back from your true potential. So for me, I had to work the opposite way. A lot of people try and focus on their strengths without realizing they have this one terrible negative habit that's really holding them back. It's the same thing with health. If you're going to the gym every single day, but then you're smoking 2 packs a day, right?
Yeah.
It's having an extreme negative effect on your results. With, a lot of people, they don't want to admit that they have this one bad habit that's holding them back. And it really is like an ego thing. You have to kind of
Absolutely.
break down your personality and say, I'm really bad at this one thing, which not a lot of people are willing to do. They're not willing to say, I'm really bad at one thing.
Oh,
And it's more about humbling yourself and saying, if I want to get better, right? Because there are athletes out there that are just uncoachable. And I've seen it firsthand.
mm,
All right. There are athletes out there that you can't give them critique or anything without them backlashing. They get extremely defensive and
yeah.
they don't make any improvements. So like 6 months from now, you see them in the same place because they don't accept critique. They're not
Mm,
critiquing themselves because they think that they're best already. And they go through a long stretch of time where they just don't make any improvements whatsoever.
yeah, 100%. So do you really think that some people are just not coachable?
I don't think so. I think it's more so like people need to experience the ego death, right?
Yeah.
Whether that happens or not, I think at some point, if you really want to change, it will happen. So I don't think people are just uncoachable indefinitely. I think if you really want to make something work, you have to accept that critique, right? Whether you're going to critique yourself or whether somebody else is going to critique you. Like if I went out and told somebody, you're doing something extremely wrong, you know, and it's either they accept it or they don't. If they can accept it, they're going to be able to make the changes necessary faster than the person that, gets defensive and says, the system that I have is way better, right? There's a ton of people out there that are trying to critique me on my trading. And I'm like, all right, I'm not listening to you unless you are above me, right? And I'm not
Yes.
saying that like from an ego perspective. I just don't take critique from somebody that is behind me as far as performance because they have things that they need to work on. And you need to look at it like from that perspective. And that's where I was for a very long time. I was an unprofitable trader that was system hopping consistently. And I would be the
Mm,
guy that was in the comment section like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing that wrong, without realizing that I was a terrible trader myself. So until
yeah.
you can flip that perspective and say, I am actually not a good trader, I have things that I need to work on, I probably should keep my mouth shut and listen to the people that are more experienced. They are actually making profits in the markets. And that kind of goes into like the whole ICT cult thing
Yeah.
where, people are saying the market is driven by an algorithm or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, all right, well, show the results from your trading, right? If this is the case, you should be making way more money than me.
Yeah. 100%. Kyle, I could sit here and talk to you for the next 5 hours. The conversation is so interesting, but I want to wrap it up here because I want people to really take in the lessons on the topic we discussed. I'm pretty sure you're going to come back maybe in a few months, couple of months, and we can discuss another topic. And I would love that. But in the meantime, we want to highlight that trading isn't just about your trading plan. It's about your habits, your mindset, your sleep, your routines, your inputs in your life that you are going to exercise on a daily basis that are going to dictate your outputs on the charts. And that will have a huge effect on your self-control, how you view yourself, and how you control your mind. It's all about having that control over your thoughts, not getting rid of your thoughts, not getting rid of your emotions, but being aware and not acting upon them. I always kind of call it gap of control. I took it from Stoicism because Stoics are all about not responding to the environment and, holding that control within yourself. And genuinely, the amount of successful traders I spoke with, they all have the same mindset of actually living like an athlete in a way. But then at the same time, you know, I had a pleasure, Kyle, just touching back on the topic, I had the pleasure to speak to some you know, traders who worked for big banks and now have retired, and they did also say it doesn't get any easier. You have to put in the work internally all the time, you know, all the time.
And when you get bigger with trading, those same things pop up. So like,
yes,
you know, if you're comfortable right now trading $100 risk, that same feeling, you know, when you're putting the risk on initially, when you're uncomfortable, it's going to come back when you start risking 250. It's going to come back when you're risking $1,000, right? And it's an infinite game. So with trading, you know, you can get as big as you want, and you know, when you start leveling up, those same problems that you run into, it's going to pop up again.
100%. Guys, so we are giving 425k two-step pro accounts. And also I want to mention, we had an issue with YouTube, so we are going to upload on YouTube this conversation, and you were able to actually watch us on X live. So for those of you who are here live, made that effort of attending, simply reshare this on X. Reshare as many times. No, you can actually reshare it twice. So reshare on your profiles, and then I will announce 4 winners in next week's Thursday blog on trading psychology, where we are going to summarize this conversation with Kyle essentially. So we are going to also attach winners to the YouTube comment section once we upload this video too. Guys, thank you so much. Kyle, thank you so much. Guys, I just want to say you'll be seeing Kyle a lot more. He's officially our brand ambassador now as well. So Kyle, I can't wait till we speak next. And I can't wait till we tell people some exciting news soon as well. So thank you for your time, guys. Have a wonderful weekend.
All right. Thanks, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Where success meets psychology in Paulina's way. Strengthen your mindset every week. Success story every Wednesday. Traders who broke through their limits. Psychology session every Friday. Join now. Hit the bell. One session could change your trading forever. Funding Pips. Built by traders for traders.